I am a Southern girl from the Bible Belt of the South who has reverted to Islam. A lot of y'all are asking me why, how, did I do this for a man? No, I did not. Even being accused of practicing black magic and having an identity crisis. So I thought I would take this holy time during the holy month of Ramadan to share my experience with y'all. This is going to be a several part series because there are a lot of layers to this story. My father was in the Air Force growing up and was invited to live in Saudi Arabia by the royal family, and he was stationed in Riyadh and Jeddah. He also lived in Abu Dhabi, and I was influenced by the Middle East because of my father. And he was also invited out to Dubai back in 2006 to work for Emirates before Dubai was what it is now, like when it was first starting out. So originally, we were all going to move to Dubai for my father to take this job, and he did not take the job, but I was always curious about Dubai and thought that one day I might come here, but put it out of my mind so I could move to New York City and go to university at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York. Now, I didn't grow up religious. My family did not go to church on Sundays. We were kind of the outsiders of the community. My mother was a chemist, one of the smartest women I've ever met. She's an Aquarius for all of y'all astrology lovers. She beats to her own drum. She questions tradition. And God was not really a conversation in our house. Now, her father, my grandfather, and her sisters all worked in the church. My grandfather was a devout Christian. Like, he loved Jesus. We would, stand in a circle before dinner and hold hands, and he would read verses out of the Bible and cry. Like, Jesus was his everything. Even my grandmother, they were both pure souls, amazing, amazing people. And I would go to church with him sometimes. He would try to bring me along with him because I liked gospel music. I love to sing. And so I liked to go to church with him for the music. But other than that, it was a very foreign place for me. And it was something that I've always kind of been a seeker. I've always been a seeker and wondering, like, what is the truth? What is the truth? And I started having like kind of paranormal experiences as a child. I remember staying at my grandfather's house one night and opening my eyes at 3 o'clock in the morning and seeing a huge light orb floating through his house. I think my grandfather's house was definitely protected by angels, and that was the first time and not the last time that I've had experiences with the supernatural. So I knew that there was something going on, but I just didn't know what it was. My grandmother used to always say to me that my soul must have lived in the Middle East in a past life and has been trying to come back. I have been fascinated by it since I was a kid. I'm sure my dad had a big, influence on me with that. And I have always been drawn to it over here. But again, I didn't bring it to the forefront of my mind as a possibility when I was 18. I decided to pursue a career in fashion. I moved to New York City to attend the Fashion Institute of Technology. And that's when everything changed for me. I'll be honest with y'all, like, I was spoiled growing up. My father gave me pretty much anything I asked for, and he, alhamdulillah, he paid for my college. He supported me through school. He got me an apartment, and I never had to worry about anything. I never struggled. Like, I struggled with other things. I had a lot of grief and sadness from my parents' divorce, but struggling with security and stability and finances was never a problem for me. Since I had this beautiful luxury apartment on Wall Street in New York, I had a successful career in fashion. Even while I was in college, I was about 20 years old at this time. My father was providing for me. I had a really generous, successful boyfriend. Like, everything was going so well for me. And I was always housing struggling artists. I had a lot of friends who didn't really come from privilege, but they were struggling in New York, and I had a beautiful place to stay. So I was always inviting people in to stay at my house. And one day I felt just so unfulfilled with life. I remember being like, is this all there is? Like, I wasn't particularly happy with my job. I was bored, to be honest. I was bored. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I felt just unsatisfied. And I remember watching an interview one night with Celine Dion on the TV, and she was my idol growing up, you guys. Like, I loved Celine Dion, and just thinking, like, I miss singing, I miss performing, like, I want to do something like that. I want to do something that lights up my soul. And I prayed to God that night. I didn't know, again, if God was real, but I was like, God, just take everything away from me and let me start over. Now, be careful what you wish for, because God answered that request really quick. I ended up getting laid off my job. My boyfriend and I broke up. I had a bit of a health crisis. I had to leave college, and my father cut me off all at the same time, because my father had a deal with me that as long as I was in school, he would provide. And I had this illness. I couldn't go to school. So he didn't really understand. I don't think anyone in my family really understood how serious my condition was. And I was just used to being independent at that time. So I was like, fine, I'll figure it out myself. And I ended up having to abandon my apartment, and one of the girls and her sisters who I let stay with me, they returned the favor, and they were like, you know, you let us stay with you, you can come stay with us. Now, their apartment was in a dangerous part of New York City, and they gave me a room with an air mattress that had a hole in it, and every night it would deflate. I would wake up on the ground and I'd have to blow it up again. I had no money in my account. I was literally eating instant mashed potatoes every day. Like, I went from living like a queen. Like, my father said I was born with a horseshoe in me, because I've always been really lucky, and like I've always had these like amazing blessings in my life. And then all of a sudden it was like everything dried up and there was nothing left, and I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? So I started going to the library every day to read about manifesting. My grandmother gave me all these books, You Can Heal Your Life and The Secret and all that stuff, when I was in high school. So I thought, okay, well, let me try to consciously manifest. Remember, I'm like 20 years old at the time. I know nothing about this kind of stuff. And I felt like such a loser, you know, like I messed up my whole life, and I was feeling so bad about myself. And I went to sleep one night, and this man came to me. He was about 1,000 years old. He was like skin and bone. And he brought me into a cave with him, and he called himself Muhammad. And he had me sit down on this stone, and in between us was a stone with a book on it, a holy book. And he said to me, I spoke to God. And I said, what did God say? And he said, he told me to tell you to forgive yourself. Still to this day, I cannot even share this story without getting emotional, because I woke up and I was like, God is real. Like, I knew that God was real at that point. And Alhamdulillah, this girl found me on Facebook the next day and called me in for a TV show casting. It was so random. And she introduced me to Buddhism, and I became Buddhist for 13 years. And I'm going to do a separate video on the next part of my journey.